Let me ask you one more question, Patrick, and maybe we'll give this to Janine as well. There's been this question I've heard from a lot of Catholics about, why now? Why is this happening at this moment in time? So, from your perspective, what would you say leads an attorney general to launch an investigation like this one in Wisconsin or anywhere else?
It's a great question, and certainly there have been 20 other states that have done this sort of work, and I could imagine, although I have no personal knowledge, that some attorneys general may have been waiting to see how it played out in other states. Is this an approach that's productive? But one thing that I think all of us have been reckoning with, especially over the course of the last year, was something that Janine referred to a few minutes ago, which is we in the US and other countries in the world are grappling with the structures of racism that have been here for decades and centuries. And it's been one of the focuses of our project at Fordham to think about the impact of clergy sexual abuse on Indigenous communities and other communities of color. And I can vouch for exactly what Janine said, is that in many cases, it seems that when an abuser, and this is not a Catholic phenomenon only, of course, but when an abuser committed acts against white victims, what very often happened was the authorities in whatever organization it might happen to be moved that person often to a place where the next victim was a victim of color. And so I think part of what I think we all need to grapple with is that the movement for racial justice and the movement for justice for clergy sexual abuse survivors are intrinsically linked. Certainly in the Pacific Northwest and in Alaska, many of the religious order priests who abused were sent to reservations, were sent to other poor communities and communities of color. And so I think that we're all really thinking in new ways in the last year or two about systemic inequities. And I hope that that's something that comes out of this investigation.
Thank you. And Janine, what would you add in terms of why you think this investigation is happening now, or what might lead an attorney general to do this?
Sorry. Okay. Well, I think one, sorry about that. One of the reasons I think is that much of the other litigation, including bankruptcies, are being completed. I mean, that was sort of the forefront of people filing claims, litigating in the courts, the whole statute of limitations issue, and then ultimately making claims, and many of the dioceses filing for bankruptcy. And so those are done. And I think that a lot of survivors and others in the community feel pretty unsatisfied about where the bottom line of how the church has handled it, and a sense that authorities in the church maybe have not learned a lot through this whole process other than the fight. And so I think in part it is moving towards somewhat different kind of accountability. One, to give voice to survivors, but two, to take a look at it. It fits in with the whole looking at clericalism and the church and the hierarchy and the lack of women in the church. All those things are interrelated because they are tough issues that we're facing. And I think the fact that the states, through their attorney generals and other methods, are taking a look at historically what's happened to give more information. I mean, I think it's going to be very interesting and telling to see how many survivors there are that are either willing to directly or indirectly come forward. So I think that it's sort of the next movement. The other thing that I've been concerned, and I've talked to a number of bishops about this, I am also concerned with the number of foreign priests that we're importing into this country without having the formation and the checking that we're doing perhaps in some of the seminaries and others. And so, not that I want to target a particular population, but I know that this problem is a huge problem in Africa and in Asia, and you know, we don't want a repeat of where we were before. So I think it's important to keep this in the forefront and have full transparency as to what's happened, how it was handled, and how we can handle it better.